Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us for today's discussion, Mirror Mentor Artist Roundtable. My name is Heather Wingert and I'm Director of Parent and Community Relations at Warren Wilson College. We're excited to have nearly 100 people registered for the webinar today. Right now, we want to recognize our champion, leadership, gold, and silver level sponsors for 2021. Sponsors support our events throughout the year with generous gifts to the college, and we are grateful for their support of today's event and initiatives on campus that advance our mission. Now I would like to kick it off to Gary Hawkins, Director for the Center for Faculty Innovation and Excellence and Creative Writing at Warren Wilson College. Gary?
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. The exhibition is Mirror Mentor, and it brings together the work of Warren Wilson College art professor Lauren Nguyen and three of her former students, Stephen Horton Jr., Sather Robinson Waters, and Jess Self. All of them are here with us this evening. It's curated by Professor Julie Carrow, who's the chair of the art department at the college. And the exhibition explores the reciprocity of mentorship and the separate and intertwined practices of these artists. It's currently on view at the Center for Crafts John Cram Partner Gallery, downtown Asheville. It's open from 11 to 5, Tuesday through Friday. The exhibition closes this Friday. If you haven't had a chance to go see it, I highly recommend it. I don't know if you all had a chance to read Peter Sheldall's piece about Alberts and Morandi, about his visit to the David Zorner Gallery for the first time in person in a gallery in about a year. And he talked about the wake up of the direct aesthetic experience compared to this virtual experience we've been having with art for over the last year. So if you're able to see it in person, I highly recommend it. But Sheldall also talks about the civic and social functions of galleries, meaning like remember Chablis, remember cheese cubes, remember people and talking to them. Well, we're going to do a version of that here, and I'm thankful for that. So that there's ways in which the virtual space still enables us to engage in those civic and social functions. So that's what we're doing today. Is we're having a roundtable discussion after several introductions and sort of framing for the event. We're going to have some questions to the artists, and then we'll take your questions as well. So if you'd like to, as they come to you, post your questions in the little Q&A box below. I'll be moderating that after we work through some prepared questions for the artists. First, though, I'm pleased to introduce President Lynn Morton of Warren Wilson College. President Morton joined Warren Wilson in 2017 after more than 20 years tenure at Queen's University of Charlotte, where she served as a faculty member, a dean, and finally the provost of that institution. At Warren Wilson, President Morton has made a huge impact on the college and the community. She's put us on an increased enrollment trajectory, resulting in the largest ever freshman class. She's traveled all over the country, back when we could travel, but she will be at it again, meeting with alumni and donors, encouraging the donations that have launched innovative college community partnerships around land, robust craft programming, the Center for Integrated Advising, and the largest ever unrestricted fund in college history. She's also helped create a vision for Warren Wilson College that both harvests our distinctiveness and opens doors to new programs and new partnerships, a new business major, a new music major, a green entrepreneurship program, all starting within the last couple of years, and more conversations of things to come. This year, she also worked with partnership in higher ed to around the institutions in the area, just to help us keep open in this global pandemic. And I think we've done a pretty much amazing job, and that's largely thanks to President Morton's leadership. So it's my pleasure to introduce President Lynn Morton.
Thanks so much, Gary. It is truly a pleasure to be here and to see the faces of some faculty that I haven't seen for a while, and also our wonderful alumni. We really appreciate all of you who are here today to take the time out for this really wonderful respite from the world, where we get to indulge in art and we get to be with really talented folks for a while. And I'm really looking forward to it. We are so delighted to introduce our partner, the Center for Crafts Executive Director, Stephanie Moore, who is going to share a little bit about the Center for Craft and the Mirror Mentor exhibition that is on display in downtown Asheville. Stephanie Moore has championed the work of the Center for Craft for over a decade. During that time, the Center for Craft has undergone an incredible transformation, and I've had a front row seat to watch it happen. It has become widely acknowledged as one of the strongest national nonprofit organizations working in the field of craft today. She most recently stewarded both the purchase and renovation of the 1912 historic building in downtown Asheville and successfully completed the organization's first $11 million fundraising campaign. Moore convened the 2016 Craft Think Tank, focused on craft and academia, laying the foundation for a master's level craft program, Critical Craft Studies at Warren Wilson, established in 2017. It's my great pleasure to introduce Stephanie Moore.
Thank you, President Morton. It is such a delight and an honor to be with you and the faculty and students of Warren Wilson College. The center has been a longstanding collaborator, as you know, with Warren Wilson on their craft initiative, expanding both the commitment and the teaching of craft in the region. We've also provided docent internship opportunities for students, and I'm constantly inspired by the faculty, staff and students from Warren Wilson College, and particularly the students who end up doing such significant work in the world. This exhibition, Mirror Mentor, is the latest manifestation of our collaborative activities, which also includes two previous exhibitions that I should mention. Mike Hatch's thesis project, Crafted Roots, Stories and Objects from the Appalachian Mountains. Hatch is a graduate of the MA in Critical Craft Studies program, and the first program of its kind, as President Morton mentioned, in the United States, co-founded with the center. And then, of course, the nationally traveling Gee's Bend, From Quilts to Prints, co-curated with Julie Carrow, who is here today. Mentorship plays an important role in the lives of artists. I firsthand have experience with mentorship over 30 years ago in the tutelage of Stuart Downs, who was the first former director of Soho Gallery. And those relationships and interactions are largely why I'm leading an arts organization today. And I do believe that that camaraderie and encouragement is key, and it lasts a lifetime. It is so apt that Mirror Mentor is held in the John Cram Partner Gallery. John Cram, as many of you know, is a legendary supporter of the arts in Asheville and cultivated so many local and regional artist careers through his galleries. It's wonderful to see his legacy continued in this beautifully curated show about the art of living, building meaningful and intergenerational communities, and overcoming obstacles and trauma. And lastly, just a congratulations to Julie, Laura, Sather, Stephen, and Jess. A special shout out to Sather, who was previously in the role of gallery associate at the center. And please do, before Friday, if you live locally, come see the show in person. We're just honored to have it and thankful that the world is opening up to allow us to be able to continue these experiences that are rare and also that are so important in person. So thank you.
All right, thanks, Stephanie. So now I'd like to introduce the moderators of the panel, exhibiting artist Laura Nguyen and the exhibit curator, Julie Levin Carrow. Laura and Julie will then introduce the other artists in a moment, and we'll get to the heart of the matter. So Laura Nguyen is an artist, educator, and co-owner of Stone Cloud Studio in Asheville. Ostensibly, she's the cloud to the stone, although I would argue that there's some serious stone in Laura Nguyen as well. She earned her BFA in painting from Columbus College of Art and Design, that's Columbus in Ohio, her MFA from Southern Illinois University in Carbondale. Before she arrived at Warren Wilson in 2012, Laura taught at Cal State Long Beach and at Indiana University in Bloomington. In the studio, even though her training is in painting, Laura really works widely with a wide range of media and formats. If you are in Asheville, you may know one of our beautiful murals, Bower Power, at the Refiner Creator Space in downtown. The beautiful large bird, and you may have also seen some of her other murals on campus. But her ultimate goal is always just to make meaningful work, no matter what the venue or the audience or the medium. Julie Levin Carrow is professor of art history and chair of the art department at Warren Wilson College. She earned her doctorate in art history from the University of Texas at Austin. She's a specialist in modern American art and African American art. Her publications are in recent publications include publications on the religious artworks of Alan Rowan Crete and Laura Jean Lacy, as well as the relationship of German emigre artist Winold Rice and the Harlem Renaissance art and design. Julie's curated numerous exhibitions, including Freedom of Expression, Politics and Aesthetics of African American Art, the G's Bend From Quilts to Prints exhibition that Stephanie just referenced, the collaborative project with Marilyn Zapp and the Center for Craft, and as well as the college, and Between Form and Content, perspectives on Jacob Lawrence and Black Mountain College at the Black Mountain College Museum and Art Center. So Laura and Julie, take it away, and I'll be back to help with the Q&A.
Thanks so much, Gary. It's so great to be here with all of you tonight. And what we're going to do, after I thank everyone, actually. So I want to thank Gary for being our MC. I want to thank President Morton and Stephanie Moore for their wonderful remarks. And I also want to thank the Warren Wilson College Advancement Team, especially Heather Wingert and Erica Orman for being our sort of behind the scenes gurus. And thank you all also for being here. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Laura and I had a great conversation about a month ago, primarily about her work in the gallery, but also about the other artists. And so tonight we're delighted to have everyone here to talk about their work. And so you can see the slideshow is scrolling through, and we're going to let that scroll through while we're talking. And Laura and I are going to start by introducing the artists, and then I will get to the first question. So I have the pleasure of introducing our former student, Stephen Horton Jr. Stephen, let me get my notes here. Stephen was born in Japan and also grew up partially in Japan and in the United States. I remember meeting Stephen on his very first day at Warren Wilson College when I was his transfer advisor. And it was wonderful to watch his work develop in the 2 years that he was with us. Stephen graduated in 2017 with a BA in art and a concentration in painting and drawing. But he also was very interested in graphic design and was able to work with our then creative director, Reggie Tidwell, as the graphic design crew. And so it was a really wonderful melding of his academics and his work experience. After college, Stephen moved to the West Coast and he enrolled in a fifth-year undergrad program in apparel design at Oregon State University, where he learned to sew his own clothing designs. And that has come in handy because he very soon after that landed his dream job first as an internship and then as a full-time position, which he holds now as an apparel designer at Nike World headquarters in Seattle. Okay, Laura, I'm going to let you introduce our other two artists.
All right. Thank you, Julie. I'd like to introduce Sather Robinson Waters. Sather graduated from Warren Wilson in 2018 with a studio concentration in photography. He also took many drawing classes and was strongly influenced by studying color theory. I remember meeting Sather in a 2D design class, and I felt like he was such an asset to all of the critiques, just not afraid of asking some hard questions and giving some good, strong critique. And even, I would always kind of open up with, you don't have to agree with me during critiques. And if you don't, that might be even better in terms of conversation. And so there are just a couple moments that I remember where, there are things that were challenged in the classroom. And I think he just made those conversations so much richer. After graduation, Sather pursued a painting practice, exploring the material and immaterial aspects of subjects such as plastic bags and ceramic and glass vessels. In 2019, he started making inks from plants and minerals that he foraged. And in 2020, he began exploring their properties in a more painterly manner. And you can see this work in the gallery. And then also there's so much more work on his Instagram page. So it's just this daily practice. The dedication is just immense. In the last 3 months of 2020, Sather built a studio in Silo, North Carolina, where he continues to paint and make photographs. He's looking forward to planting a pigment garden there in the spring, and I'm looking forward to following it. His work has been shown locally at Revolve, the Asheville Area Arts Council, and Glow Space Arts. So that is Sather. And I also have the pleasure of introducing Jess Self. Jess is a contemporary sculptor who works with wool. She graduated from Warren Wilson College with a BA in art in 2014 and is currently completing her MFA in sculpture at Georgia State University in Atlanta. And I've had the pleasure of reading a draft of her thesis, and I was laughing, I was crying, and I had to call her right after I read it because I just needed to talk to her after reading that draft. She combines figurative sculpture with the traditional craft of needle felting, a process of stabbing rolled up pieces of wool with barbed needle to force the fibers to lock together. Appreciating wool's ability to shapeshift into various media, such as stone or even paper, Jess explains that using wool allows me to create a strong, soft structure while providing a warm and neutral surface onto which a viewer can project a narrative or an emotional response. Along with making exhibition work, Jess loves running her business, Heartfelt Designs, and attending international residencies in places like Iceland and Norway. And she's also an amazing teacher. I've seen her student work, and I am just blown away by what she's accomplished in these last almost 3 years in graduate school. So those are our introductions.
Okay, and I'm going to add one little addendum. I was rushing a little bit, and I forgot to tell you a couple more things about Stephen that I wanted to mention. I had said that Stephen was born in Japan and went back and forth, and his work really is inspired by that sort of cross-cultural experience that he had. And I just also wanted to say that Stephen's work covers a range of media, and that's one of the really incredible things that Stephen has done. He was already doing it when he was at Warren Wilson. He started his own clothing apparel business called Choir Boy and was selling work online and to students. But his work also includes posters, album covers, streetwear, and most recently an illustrated children's book. Okay, so now I'm going to get to our first question. One of the things that I think you can notice by looking at this slideshow that we have scrolling through is just the diversity of the work of these 4 artists in this exhibition. And that was intentional. We really wanted to show that, you know, this mentorship is not about the school of Laura Nguyen or the school of the Warren Wilson Art Department, that, you know, part of mentorship is really fostering so many things. And we're going to talk about a lot of those things tonight, but it's not necessarily, or it isn't about fostering a particular style. You know, when Laura and I were talking about the show and about how we wanted to kind of bring out these aspects of mentorship in terms of the work that we chose, you know, this diversity was just so natural with these artists. But, you know, this is something that we talk about a lot, even in critiques. And I'm sure Sather, Jess, and Stephen can remember our all faculty critiques that we used to have. And we would often talk with students about, you know, what are your ideas? What stories do you want to tell? And how are you going to tell them with your materials and with your forms and with your, you know, mode of display? And so those are the things that it's so gratifying to see them in such a rich way coming through in this work. And so what we want to start with is just having all 4 artists give us a little introduction to the work in the exhibition, and then how that work relates to the work that they're doing generally right now. So we're going to start with Laura, and then we'll move on to the other artists.
And so I have 3 works featured in Mirror Mentor. The first work is a poem that I had written for my mother in her journey from Vietnam to the States in 2015. She has a way of peeling grapefruit for us where all the bitterness and the membrane, the pith is all gone. All that's left are the vesicles. And so I wanted to commemorate some of the details of her journey in that poem. But in making that piece, I wanted it to be embroidered. I wanted to stitch it together. And so there's a big embroidery hoop with the poem on top, and it's still a work in progress. And that's one of the things that, because I also do some performance work, the idea of showing the piece that isn't quite finished doesn't scare me so much. It's a work in progress, kind of like how I feel like I'm a work in progress. And there are 2 needles in there because I'm kind of working from different places, and it's just okay. And then the other piece was for forbidden grapefruit. The work that went into that grapefruit piece, my father, who passed in November, he had a series of strokes starting in 2015, in the fall of 2015. And to help him with therapy, I had the vesicles made, and he was starting to stuff them. And so when he passed in November, he was the last one to touch those pieces. And I decided I wanted to put that large plushy grapefruit together for this exhibition to kind of complement the poem that I'd written for my mother and in remembrance of my father as well. The other work is Brushes with Death. I'm currently undergoing chemo. I'm having a little break now because I'm hopefully preparing for surgery next week. Just got this news this morning, so it's still very fresh. That work is done with bamboo harvested from our backyard and my hair that was cut when I started to lose my hair at the beginning of chemo. And then the other series, the last one, is a series called Unbroken, and it's a series of photographs of scars that I've painted in gold of family members, friends, former students that are now showing work with me. And so there's a series of digital prints that are printed on aluminum. And they are an homage to kintsugi, which is a Japanese art form of mending broken pottery with lacquers and precious metals powders. And so that's just an introduction to my work, but how Wilson has influenced me, in terms of making brushes, making tools, in terms of sewing, I can't help but think of, all the craft crews from fine woodworking to blacksmithing to fiber arts, just having that environment, those studios, that work all around me has made me think about materials in a lot of different ways. And so, and I'll stop there. So, Jess?
Okay, it's a lot less scary to do public speaking like this. All I can see are my Brady Bunch boxes of speakers. So my work in the show is made with the process of needle felting wool, like Laura said earlier. And this process is where I take wool batting, roll it up like a sleeping bag, and repeatedly poke it with the barbed needle. And the fibers start to lock together similar to a dreadlock. The repetitive process is very meditative, so I get into a trance where I can process past experiences or what I'm going through at the moment. Whatever I'm working on or working through manifests itself in the work, which makes it very therapeutic. The work in this show is about trauma and the houses where those traumatic events occurred. The piece Shiner, this one that's on here right now, is actually from the following series. It's about wearing your trauma as badges that you can be proud of because you're strong enough to make it through those experiences. Even though they can be brutal, they make you stronger. And it goes amazingly with Laura's Unbroken series with gold painted scars. The figures that I'm working on now for my thesis are much different. They're all life-size. They explore a lot of different media and processes, but these figures are made from life casts of my body, and they explore different archetypes that I've embodied in my life. And I use references to archetypes we learn about in folklore and mythology to help that come across. Thank you.
Stephen, let's hear from you.
Okay. So I decided to showcase the Black Justice Flag. So this project came about as part of an internship that I was a part of last summer with the design studio called The New Company. And so they asked us to create something through design, like something uniquely personal to us. So I wanted to create a flag that expressed our unified goal within the Black community, justice for Black Americans. And it started out as just a summer project, but I realized it was just bigger, So my goal was that Black Americans across the country would proudly wave this flag, as a symbol of our unified goal. So yeah, that's why I chose to showcase this. It was also my most recent work, also the most challenging in a way of approaching like a new way of thinking, just like trying to find deeper meaning with a simple mark, right? And also trying to figure out like my role in the community and how I can make an impact with my skills or like through design or whatever, yeah, I believe as designers, like it's important that we create even like symbols like the Black Justice flag that represents a better and more hopeful future. So that's what's up in the gallery, and I'll pass it over to Sather.
My video, okay, here we go. This work is, it's come out of basically a whole bunch of time of isolation during the pandemic, and really having a lot of time to go inward and explore the more dreamlike aspects of consciousness. And it's really based around just really working with the material and exploring the different possibilities of the ink itself, and the tension between pulling it along and letting it pull me.
So should I move on to the next question, Julie?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you, Sather, Stephen, and Jess. It's so amazing to be here and to see all your faces. I just took a quick screenshot, so you'll be getting an email later with a screenshot of all your faces with Julie and Gary. That's just who's on my screen right now. So the next question I'm gonna kind of answer in my own way as I'm asking it, and then we'll go from there. But after 14 years of teaching at larger universities, I started teaching at Warren Wilson in 2012. And at the time, I'd learned so much from my previous institutions about teaching, so much from MFA students, so much from my undergraduate students and my colleagues about how I wanted to be a teacher. And throughout this time, if you count the 4 years of graduate school, I have about 23 years of teaching experience under my belt now. And coming to Wilson in 2012 was a hard decision, but I have no regrets. I am so happy that I'm here. At Wilson, the integration of curriculum, civic engagement, service, and work has impacted my own studio work as an artist and lifelong student. I go to the free store quite often before COVID. I have been known to have colleagues of mine leave bags of holy single socks at my door so I can turn them into rocks and make them into rugs and embroider moss on them. And after all the hikes that I've had on this beautiful land, I have a new appreciation for all the little things that grow all around us. And here at Wilson, we expect so much from our students, from classes to work crews, community engagement, service learning. And what we're doing is we're building towards shaping civic identity. And that's something that I, not that I hadn't thought about it, but I didn't necessarily have words and labels and curriculum around it. And so I've learned so much about how I want to navigate in this world. And because of my time here at Warren Wilson, which I'm so grateful for. But with all the teaching that I've done, I've noticed that my students, whether they're here at Wilson or in the previous places that I've taught, people are always really interested to know, like, well, how do you balance work and life and art and studio and possibly parenthood and partnership? And it was more about that work-life balance, that, you know, getting time in the studio and applying for residencies and trying to, you know, show work. And it was also about like techniques and materials, but it was this like this integrated life, right? That we're trying to pursue, I think. And so I'd like to know, and so I'm asking, so I'm kind of letting you know how it's influenced me, but how do each of you balance your art, your work, and your life? And is there something from your experience at Warren Wilson that's helped you shape that? And so we are going to go to Jess.
So I don't think that it really turns out to be a balance. It's all of these things are really woven together, and you have to have a very patient partner or also creative one. Working on my assigned crew at Warren Wilson, as well as working 2 other part-time jobs I had off campus, made me a master multitasker. So even starting with like the just smallest little things like sweeping the sculpture studio, I'd also be thinking about my next sculpture or looking at other people's art and getting inspired by it. Just constantly the wheels are turning and I never really turn it off. I learned to create a web between all the aspects of my life that are all revolved around my goal of having an art career. And I learned from the best. Laura inspired me in many ways, but the one that blew me away first was how she was able to work on so many different things at a time and make it look so effortless. She's raising a family with awesome, talented, and totally cool kids, working as a team with her husband and constantly applying to opportunities together as this badass art power couple. Having her own studio practice and never putting herself in one category, she's always letting her work take different shapes and forms. And she's teaching, but she's also pushing to grow and transform the art program at the same time. She even designed her own dream art building for the parking lot. So she got involved in everything possible as soon as she came to Warren Wilson. And yet she still found time to make really delicious meals for me. And so that's the life that I kind of strive to achieve. And Warren Wilson is just kind of full of hard workers. Like you won't be able to handle it if you're not a bit ambitious or you're afraid of doing hard work or, lazy. Thanks.
Sather.
Warren Wilson was just an amazing, overwhelming experience. Exactly for all these reasons. You have work, you have your classes, you have the service that you're doing, and then all these other things that are going on all the time, all the connections to be made. And honestly, the lessons that I was learning there about how to balance my life, how to take care of myself, I didn't learn them until at least a year after I graduated. It was a very slow release. And continually waking up now in my life to all of the things that I learned while I was in Warren Wilson has been amazing. It's every year, it's every month, a new thing, a new aspect of that experience becomes available to me that was previously like locked somewhere. And a lot of it has to do with the mentors, especially Lara, and the way that they pushed me forward and encouraged me to challenge ideas that I had about who I was or what I could do.
Say there, do you have an example of something that has occurred to you in the last couple of years or in the last month?
Well, I mean, going back further, the whole idea of painting, I was kind of like, I got to Warren Wilson. I started studying photography, and then I was like, oh, okay, I'm a photographer. And I sort of like, I'd always painted stuff, but I just sort of was like, nah. And Laura really challenged that very directly and was like, no, like you can do you can do all of these things. One does not exclude another. And so that was a very helpful voice that got me moving in the direction that it was part of what got me moving in the direction of painting and exploring that process.
That's great. Thanks. And Stephen?
I think my experience at Wilson helped me realize how much I love like art and design. Just like getting introduced to painters and drawers like at that time from Laura, like in particular like Egon Schiele. I was like obsessed with that dude. And I'm just coming from like a city and then going to like the mountains, kind of like it feels just being isolated with really nothing to do but play basketball. I played at Warren Wilson. That was like my main focus. But then, yeah. Anyways, playing basketball, and then like art allowed me to sort of start chasing and exploring what I was really drawn to, and I was like getting obsessed with it. And I'll be in my dorm room like if we won't be practicing, just like looking up stuff, everything from like art, design, fashion, all that stuff. So yeah, Warren Wilson is a big part of my inspiration for sure, and will always be. I tell Laura that all the time, and Laura and Julie, like both awesome professors, also like the homies now. So it's great, the relationships I developed, and just like everything I learned. Laura was always so open to me like trying stuff. I love that, and I continue to like do that now, and like just challenge me to like, yo, what if you like paint the door? I don't know, stuff like little stuff like that, where I didn't think was possible. Also like incorporating like graphic design in my senior show. Like I didn't think it was possible. I thought I had to do some drawing and paintings and stuff. So it's tight. I love Wilson and I love y'all.
And we love you too, Stephen. Okay, well, we are at our last question before we open it up to the audience. And this last question is about mentorship. And of course, we've been thinking a lot about that in putting together this exhibition. And, just thinking about, well, how important mentorship is in terms of our own teaching for Laura and I, and all of our colleagues at Warren Wilson. But of course, all of us have had important mentors in our lives. I can still remember for myself, as an undergrad, sitting in the basement of the Duke University Museum with Jill Meredith, who was the curator of medieval art, who took an interest in me, even though I was not interested in medieval art, but I was interested in museum education. And so we would sit in the basement of the museum, surrounded by all these objects, brainstorming ways that I could do projects in the museum about museum ed. And she helped me get my first job as a museum educator. And so, then kind of bring that around to I'm at Wilson and I have students who've come to me and they've been interested in museum education or museum work. And we do projects in our gallery, like with the Gee's Bend show, where I was able to work with students who were interested in museum work, and they helped with the exhibition. They wrote some little essays in the catalog. And so I think Laura's about to talk, and I think she's going to agree with me that it's really one of the most satisfying, if not the most satisfying aspects of teaching, are those relationships that you build one-on-one with students in the classroom and outside of the classroom, and then even after graduation. So it's going to let Laura sort of talk about mentorship a little bit, and then we're going to turn it over to the other artists to talk about how they see mentorship as, at Warren Wilson, and how those relationships were important to them.
All right, thanks, Julie. Well, just to start to reiterate what we were saying, my daughter was listening to a podcast, and I've relayed this story to a couple other people, but she asked me what I thought was the most important thing about being human was. And I looked at her and I was like, it's relationships. And she's like, you're right. That's what the podcast said. And so at the end of the day, I think all of my relationships make my life richer, whether they're family or friends, mentors or students, my children, or just, a conversation, with a stranger at a park, like it could be brief, they could be lifelong. I have a friend, Corey Troxel, who is formerly Corey Abella, who was at my baptism. And so I have a lifelong friend, someone who's known me since I was born, literally. And so relationships are definitely the most important thing. And that's the most important thing about mentorship. And the Columbus College of Art and Design, I had amazing mentors, Tam Peterson, Dennis Drummond, Lowell Tolstedt, where I learned painting, drawing, color, design. If it weren't for them, I wouldn't be teaching. They taught me to love that privilege of teaching, because it is so much that you get to work with all these young, curious, excited, and hungry minds. And that the other thing I found out is my students are my mentors. You have to have mentors that are younger than you, fresher than you, have more energy than you. I've learned so much from my students over the years. And then in graduate school, I had so many amazing mentors, Joel Feldman, Ed Shea, Shanae Kim, so many people at Southern Illinois that really influenced my work and my life. And Don Gavin, Aaron Palmer, the amazing mentors. I wouldn't be where I am if it weren't for them. But the other mentors are my colleagues. I have an amazing group of colleagues here at Warren Wilson. I had Martha McLeish at Indiana University, and she is my friend and my mentor. But here, I have Julie Carrow, James Darr, Gary Hawkins, Rachel Himmelheber, Leah Lietzen, Betty Bates, who retired a few years ago, and I cried and cried and cried. Eric Bated, Jessica White, and I'm just so lucky to have colleagues that teach me on a daily basis on how to do things a little bit better, or maybe take things a little bit easier. There's just so many more people, but that's what you get when you're a teacher. You get to meet so many people. So many people come through your life. So many people come into your life, and then some stay forever and ever. And so the beauty of just where in the time that we live is that we can communicate with each other on a daily basis if we want to. And that's been a wonderful aspect of just this life and this career and this art life. So yeah, mentorship. But so I'd like to open that up to, we'll start with Sather, and then we'll change up the order a little bit. And so just, the importance of mentors and just that relationship that you've had. And we are on a show, we're in an exhibition together, but I know for a fact that you've had so many mentors throughout the college. So, cross-disciplinary, cross-pollination. So yeah, I would love to hear you speak to those mentors as well.
Yeah. It's really, going to Warren Wilson really opened up a lot of worlds. I most of the panel I could consider mentors. And to me the word, it has a lot to do with acknowledging that, like the little me that I walk around with in my head all day is part of a wave. that's moving, and uh, and and you know, my mentors feed into the energy that I carry with me, and then hopefully I can pass that on as well. And like that to me is what I talk about. And being a mentee is also like it's helped me like to, you know, like humble myself a bit as well, and you know, allow new ideas, allow myself to be wrong as well. um and people like Laura and Eric were especially uh important in that regard at Warren Wilson. And going forward, like even today, it's outside of this and inside, like this mentor experience is also just essentially about friendship, and learning that, you know, the like all these people are, you know, it's all about the friendship essentially. And and like that realization you have when like, oh, like the teacher is also, you know, when the teacher becomes a human as well, to me is that's when it really becomes a full experience of mentorship, because um uh that's closer to the truth to me, is just recognizing uh people as human, and essentially on a similar scale to your own consciousness. um yeah.
Okay, thanks, Taylor. Now we're gonna have Stephen.
Yeah, I think just my mentor just put a lot of new stuff in front of me and just introducing me things, you know, new things, and yeah, just changing the way I view art and like self-expression and stuff. Yeah, I yeah, is that okay? Is that too short?
That's fine. I'm sure there'll be another question for you coming up. Why don't we wrap this part up with Jess, and then we're gonna open it up.
Okay, so Warren Wilson's such a tight-knit community that professors and students are able to form a deeper bond than other schools, I think. The work crew assignments allow you to work alongside the faculty and get to know them on another level. I've babysat both Laura and Julie's kids, and got to be involved in their lives as well. And I know that I'm not the only one. I still hang out with many of my Warren Wilson professors. They're my teachers, but now I consider them super close friends. And not to play favorites, but Laura and James are definitely my top 10 favorite people. I forget what they were called, but there's a term for students who would graduate and then would never leave. And I think that I'm one of those, because after I graduated, I was awarded the Fine Art Fellowship funded by the Center for Craft, and was given a studio space, and I just hung out with them and made work on campus for a year. So that's my experience with that. But looking at this show makes me look back and reminds me of how my relationship specifically with Laura has developed and progressed. I remember working together with her on my undergraduate research paper on human hair and contemporary art. I have a large jar of her hair still in my studio. The first form of the grapefruit piece was a performance. And I think Laura and I really solidified our relationship and fell in love when I went with her and her daughter to DC and Pennsylvania to see her perform. On this trip, we were in the car for a very long time and basically bonded on all of the things that this show is about. I have seen her kiddos grow up, and now I'm someone who her daughter Moon wants to FaceTime. I feel so special. Laura makes every student feel so loved and important. She's such a bright light, and every one of her students adores her. She makes herself so available to them in every way. She doesn't sleep, promise you that. I would get emails from her at 3 a.m., and I know this was a regular thing. I want my students to connect to me the way hers do, and trying to learn to do that. And a pandemic is definitely a challenge, but hopefully she can give me pointers on that as well. I hope that I can be half the inspiration she is, and she's still critiquing my work and editing papers for me, and she talks to me about hers. So that relationship and mentorship is ever evolving.
Thank you. Thanks to all of you. This was great, and I'm sure that there's some other questions out there. So I'm going to turn it over to Gary.
Okay. Don't be shy, folks. There are not a lot of questions queued up yet. But the other advantage of the Hollywood Squares is that you could ask a question and then tell me not to name you. And so you could, say something bold that you might not want to say in person. But we do have a question for you, Say. They're very specific, and therefore very important. From Laura Sellers, what species are you planting in your dye garden?
Gosh, I am wanting to grow some turmeric of my own, and some indigo, and a whole bunch of yeah, and some others. I don't have all the names in front of me right now.
Totally fair. All right. I'm waiting for folks to warm themselves up, and I will risk one. I was a student of Laura's. Stephen and I were fellow students in drawing too. And one thing I remember Laura saying when I'd sort of have a piece I thought done, and maybe very proud of myself, she would always say, like, can you push it here and push it here, and like always wanting to push it, just like some way, which wonderful and so annoying, because like I had it. It was done. So I'm wondering to folks, to Stephen, Sather, and Jess, be as specific as you can. How are you pushing your current work? If you were to have that voice from Laura in your head, maybe you have it specifically, or maybe I've just reintroduced it to you, but how are you pushing your work?
I think just not being afraid of trying new things, and she's so supportive that you can really pitch any kind of idea to her, and she'll tell you whether or not you're going in the right direction. But I think the main thing is just experimenting and constantly learning yourself. I don't think that art making or living would be much fun without learning new things.
Yeah, for me, I'm even at work now at Nike. I'm like definitely like always like pushing the envelope when it comes to like product design, and kind of challenging the brief or a brief I get. Yeah, I think that's what a lot of, well, I know like Nike, like it gets like very everything starts to feel the same. Well, at least for me. So I'm like constantly like definitely taking like that like non-traditional approach. Like I didn't study graphic design, so everything's like very experimental, and like a lot of happy like mistakes will happen. So I'm always just like trying stuff, like Jess said, experimenting with stuff. And yeah, always challenging the brief, like always like the homework assignment or something, right? Like how far can you push it? Yeah, I always do that, like carry that with me for sure.
Thanks. Sather, do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I just keep working, and making and trying to connect to how I'm feeling, and bring that into the work. And of course, trying new things. I've been doing some life drawing recently, of human form again, which Betty Bates' life drawing class was a massive challenge. I think the first time you get into a life drawing class, it's like, wow, 2 hours now, and so working on that has been a way to kind of push myself, revisit something that was challenging, and try to bring that farther.
Thanks. I'm watching the time. I think we have time for this one more question, and it's to you, Jess, from Tamara Johnson, who's really curious about the colorful patches, the embroidered patches on your sculptures, and wondering, are they colorful growths? Are they sort of wounds? How would you just talk about that particular aspect of the sculpture?
Yeah, that piece kind of started as a sample. I was giving myself 7 days to make seven figures, working on them 7 days each. So that one was the embroidery one, obviously, but I just wanted to make the scars on the body represent traumatic experiences. I think I'm kind of doing that in my work now too, but just really embracing them and not being afraid of using them, and allowing them to make you more beautiful because you're stronger. I think that they're really, really beautiful bruises, and those are the colors that I was channeling. But when it came through, it's like very bright colored, and so it made me feel like I achieved that a little bit more.
Thanks.
So I'm going to pop in here just to let you know about our next event on April 15th, but I think we can go about 5 minutes over. It looks like we had a few more questions come in, so I'll just do a plug. Thank you so much, Gary, Julie, Laura, Sather, Jess, and Stephen, for this wonderful discussion. And we want to keep it going since we have these questions coming in. Want to let everybody know that I'd like to invite you on Thursday, April 15th from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern. We will have the Warren Wilson College Green Entrepreneurship Program present an Arthur Viney Davis Foundation supported lecture, An Ecosystem for Change, Building Community-Controlled Economies, featuring entrepreneurs, Naya Evans and James Vumboy. And I'll put the registration link in the chat box. I'll kick it back to you, Gary.
Okay, thanks. Okay, I'm very curious about this question. I hope I get it right. It reminds us of the movie Phenomenon with John Travolta, which has a scene where it's revealed that the person who has been buying his objects of desires, that he is the one who's been buying his objects of desires homemade chairs. Like, so there's like kind of like a it was unknown who was supporting the work, and it turns out to be the beloved. So, but the question is then, this is what's compelling to me. Do you find the muse supportive or disingenuous? Would you rather get noticed or become famous on your own? How do you keep boundaries when accepting the support of anyone, including a mentor? It's pretty big, but I'm just sort of whatever piece of that captures any of you, I'd be curious.
I kind of want to go back to what Sather was saying in terms of just like continuing to work. I'm married to a sculptor, and he has a piece called But I Have Some Wood Ideas, and it's a box that he's made, and there's just wooden light bulbs that have been turned in there. And so there's like little light bulbs, big light bulbs. Some have that coil that with the new light, with the LED, and then some are more traditional. And he started making this piece because he wanted to continue to work while there weren't any other ideas. And so you turn a light bulb, now it's full of these wooden light bulbs. And I think that that's important, is to work through not having ideas or not having maybe a story to tell, to kind of work towards something else and to keep your hands busy and your mind busy. But also, something else in that question, this idea of a muse. So much of my work is either autobiographical or about my family and their stories and their journeys. And I think for me, it's been less about a muse, but more about storytelling. And that's something that I think has become more and more important to me, having landed this job at Wilson, is that Wilson is full of stories and storytellers, and being around people that do this for a living so beautifully in their own disciplines. I can't help but be affected by that on a daily basis. And so for me, it's not necessarily, the stories are the muses. They're the reasons, they're the motivations. And why do we do that? Because we want to be entertained, but we also want to create closeness and have conversations and dialogue. And so art can be that. It can be the beginning of those conversations.
Thanks, Laura. Anyone else have any thoughts about that question, muse or otherwise?
I guess I'm kind of confused about the second half of that. I'm not sure what she means about getting noticed or becoming famous on your own. Do you mean like not giving the credit to your mentor, or do you mean passing that? I don't know. I don't think that that's a thing, and I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I think,
go ahead, Sather.
I think like one of the core aspects of this is, like, are we getting distracted by these things and letting them pull us away from the work we need to do? Or are we treating it more as all a kind of game that's played around, a ring around the rosy, around the central issue, which is more, like the thing that I make isn't necessarily the point. I make an object, I have an object, but just the object on its own without any context doesn't mean anything. It's the connections that we're creating with people and the ways that the stories are traveling. Yeah, it's an ecosystem, and these are aspects of that ecosystem. And I think there's some personal choices to be made in terms of the specifics of the question, in terms of how to navigate that ecosystem, and that will kind of form who you are, the choices that you make.
All right, thanks. I'm going to let us tackle one more, which is connected to things that you just said and Laura was talking about the relationships, about that ecosystem. And someone just wants to know more about like how you're keeping up your mentoring conversations in the pandemic. And actually, some of you had said, emails from Laura at 3 a.m. So it is like very sort of practical question, and just wondering, sort of, far-flung, different places across the country at this point, in a pandemic, not traveling. Like, how are you staying connected, and not just with the mentors and the people on this call, but with all the people who are connected to you as an artist?
For me, it's just like with any other friend, just reaching out every now and again, saying, I'm thinking about you. And then that kind of just dives into what you're working on now and things that you're struggling with. And then, you stay chatting for a few days in a row, asking questions about things and getting feedback, and then, you know, you take a little bit of time off, and then you do it all over again. And I, you know, sometimes I FaceTime, and yeah, mostly just text like, I love you. Don't forget me.
I think with the pandemic, it's only highlighted the need for these relationships even more. I think we all miss each other. You know, we miss humanity. We miss smiling at people and knowing that they're seeing a smile. You know, like I've been learning, like, how do I smile with my eyes more? You know, to let that stranger know, like, I notice you and I'm smiling at you. And so with this, you know, text, FaceTime, social media, all those things are coming into play. But I think what Jess is saying is that it has to be reciprocal, right? There has to be a back and forth. It has to be like mutual respect, mutual like wanting to connect. And when those things come into play, you know, those relationships, it doesn't matter how long it's been that since you've talked, you kind of pick up where you left off. And I think that's, and you don't feel resentment, and you're not resentful if a lot of time passes, because we know we're busy. We know we have a lot of different things going on, and we're juggling and balancing. And so there's also that in terms of just like, yeah, when we have time, we'll get together, and when we get together, it'll be like there was no time at all in between. And I think that that's the beauty of the mentor mentee and how that flip flops, right? So many of my mentees are my mentors, and my mentors are my, you know, like I can't say that, but so many of my mentees have become mentors, whether they know it or not. And that's just a wonderful thing.
All right. Thank you. Well, I think we need to leave it there. So thanks everyone. It's been a real pleasure, and can't wait to see you, not just in the square.
Thank you, everyone in attendance, and just thank you so much to Gary, Heather, Julie, Sather, Jess, Stephen. Thank you for being a part of this and making this happen today.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. Thanks, everyone.